Hi, thanks, Robin. Thanks for all who have joined us and welcoming me as the new CEO of the Grants Pass Chamber. I've been a member for over 20 years and really excited to take on this role, and especially to be here today with educated and knowledgeable folks to talk about cash flow. So to kick it off, if we can, from my world of doing business, being a chamber member before getting into this role, I think there's a lot of misconception on what the difference between cash flow and profitability is. Obviously, if the bank's growing, you're profitable. But I'm wondering if we can start off with a question on, give me an example of how businesses may be operating profitably but experiencing a negative cash flow. And if we just want to start here with you, Troy.
Sure. So some businesses have the tendency of misconstruing profitability with cash flow. They'll look at it and say, oh, look at all this money I have coming in, but they don't realize all the money they have going out. So they look at top line rather than bottom line, right? So top line's your total amount of cash that's coming in. Your bottom line is really the amount of cash that you have to do something with beyond your operations. So cash flow is really looking at that amount of money that's coming in versus that money that's going out for your operations. And profitability is really the cream on the crop on top of it, right? So the money that you have to play with after the fact, to grow with, to put back to equity owners, whatever it is that you want to use that money for. But where people get in trouble typically is, again, misconstruing top line versus bottom line and profitability versus cash flow. And what they'll do is they'll look at it and say, look, I'm making all this money, and then they'll forget that all that money came from cost of goods. You had to bring in cost of goods, you had to grow an inventory. And typically what you'll see, where the first downfall is in the spiral, we call it the death spiral, right? Like the death spiral is you're losing all your money, right? The first thing you'll see is they'll burn through all their inventory and not have money to replenish. So that's where I've typically seen it, and I think that's pretty typical, especially in small business.
Yeah, Casey or Dan, anything to add?
Another example that I think about how can we be profitable versus have that cash flow. If you think about your accounts receivable, accounts payable, if you have a service-based business and you are charging your clients and waiting for that invoice to be paid, you can be showing on your statement, oh, we have all this money because we're anticipating this income coming in. But if people don't pay, they can go a month, 2 months, 3 months before that revenue actually comes in. That can really affect your cash flow. Rentec, we're a software as a service company, so we really have built it into our business model that someone can't use the software until they pay for the software for the next month. And that's pretty standard for software as a service, that you have to pay for the service before you get access to it. One of the ways that that's helpful is if you add automated billing to your business and just build it into your expectation of how to increase that revenue, and it kind of evens out that bottom line. So that's another example.
Yeah, for mine, Troy was saying, is this thing on? You guys hear me okay? So as Troy was saying, profitability and cash flow are different, and the problem is people look at that profitability and then they make future purchases based on the profitability, not the ending cash flow. So it's really important that you do your books well enough to be able to see whether or not you're going to have the ability to do and leverage and make those purchases and outbound and things that you need to based on actual cash that you have, not the profitability of the company. I'm in the real estate world, so I see a lot of real estate agents that have money coming in, but they're spending it faster than they can actually, retain and keep that money, and therefore there becomes a liquidity problem for them.
Yeah, thank you. Very good. And I think we started to hit on the next question, and if I can start with you on this one, Casey, because with a business, Casey without a microphone, as a business that provides some of those technologies and services for others to deploy, the question being is, what tools or processes do you use to manage cash flow for your organization?
So Rentec Direct is a accounting software for property managers and landlords. So having that foundational understanding of those accounting processes kind of really built it into our best practices for Nathan and myself to really understand the bottom line of accounting. So QuickBooks is kind of our base standard. The processes is that cash-based accounting. So like I said, we're charging for our services and getting paid at that same time. We're not future thinking of what is coming along the line. That's kind of that accrual-based accounting where you're thinking about revenues coming in, you're really doing projections 1 month, 3 months, 6 months down the line. But we've really stayed with that cash basis, which works for our company, but you really have to think about your business needs because it might not work for everyone, especially when you have multiple owners, different types of equity in your business, and also if you start getting so much revenue that it gets a little bit more complicated with your taxes and stuff. But QuickBooks, Excel spreadsheets, those are kind of the foundation, I think, that a lot of people can use to really understand, and utilizing the resources of networks like this to kind of understand, like, what are you doing? How does it work for you?
Yeah, thank you. Pretty good answer. Anything
Yeah,
to add?
I mean, that's the same as us, right? It's a lot of exporting from QuickBooks into Excel so that you can then manipulate the data and do forecasting is a lot of what we do.
All right, Dan, excuse me, for somebody working in the industry, you know, analyzing a lot of these things and taking a look at coaching, helping others, can you give us an example of a critical point or turning point for you in understanding cash flow and how you might help coach others in that?
Yeah, so about 9 years ago, I actually acquired a real estate property that was cash flowing very well. I decided to make improvements on that property, therefore zapping the revenue that I needed to pay taxes and insurance on that property. It was about a $14,000 hit. And so I saw the funds in there, needed to actually repair and renovate a property, but instead of looking ahead and seeing that I needed to pay the taxes and insurance on that property, unfortunately spent that money, had to pull it from my own proceeds to be able to write the business. And I learned at that point that you can't pull from your own proceeds or your own stores to be able to really help a property or a business, you know, right their way.
I can relate. Been there. Troy, I mean, you guys have gone through some expansion. You know, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, ours is a very, I think just a different, you know, we started 18 months before COVID. And so, or maybe not even that long. So I think COVID was a pretty eye-opening experience for all of us, for our business, and for pretty much all the businesses out there. And being in the food and beverage industry, we were looking at, well, how do we stay open? How do we cash flow this as best as possible? And that means we had to take a lot of hard hits. That means we had to reduce inventory, reduce stock of you know, of goods that are coming in, of our raw inventory, our raw goods. And so it was you know, it's difficult to figure out, but I'm glad we did that early. You know, when we were making, you know, pretty much nil. So that we learned that lesson, and it put us in a pretty good position now to grow and to be confident that we have the cash available, and you know, we can talk debt and equity all day long too, but that we had the ability to take debt and service that debt as well after the fact.
Sure, and the debt service playing right into the cash flow, so yeah.
Yep.
And for those in the audience, I call thank you to Trevor from the Hive for always being a gracious host. He called me having a heart attack this morning saying I've been waiting on a new roof for 3 weeks, and they showed up, of course, today. So pardon that. If anybody, you know, pretty casual conversation here, so if you missed something or want us to back up, let us know. We might have a little bit of this, and for the future improvement of our venue here at the Hive, so thank you. I'm going to get back to maybe Casey on this one with what you're doing in the community, but you know, when you're talking about cash flow and growing that business, how do you balance your focus on the bottom line, you know, and then also add in the employee welfare and the community giving back that you do here?
So I think what helped Rentec be successful and be in a position where we can participate and give back to our community is being really strategic about our spending and not giving more than we had. And that allowed us to put us in a position where we could budget in the future. So Rentec was very, very lean for the first 5 years. Nathan, our founder, he was working full-time at another company, developing the software, supporting clients on his off time. So it was really those lean strategic decisions that helped Rentec build a client base, Rentec start generating revenue to put in reserves, without needing to rely on the revenue to support Nathan and that first employee financially. The first employee was someone who was a commission-based sales. So again, these strategic moves that made us grow our clients, start making more revenue, but keeping our expenses really, really low. So I think that set us up into a position as we got older and started to become more involved in the community, and then we're starting to do events and find things that seem really interesting to support, we are now in a position to have a budget set aside for community give back. And then when I think about how we can support employees in the same way, it's that same strategic decisions. At what point are we hiring someone? Do we need to do this? Can we do it ourselves? Can we find a consultant or a contract worker who can do it a little bit cheaper or a little bit more affordably before bringing someone on as a full-time position? Because with employees comes payroll taxes, extra insurance, equipment that they might need. So all these extra things that might be required before you can start reaping the benefits of that extra revenue generating person. So I think it's just keeping that mindset of strategy and what am I doing and how can it also help? What are you trying to get from it? Are you trying to grow your business? Are you getting exposure? Are you trying to get that feel-good feeling? And I think Rentec's finally at that position where we can set that budget to be involved. And then if you don't have the money to spend on community give back or to hire employees, how else can you get involved? That is more of an in-kind donation or networking and just making it so you're at a position for when you do have the revenue to give back, that you have those connections already built, or when you're ready to hire, you already know your community, you know who you want to hire too. So just keep being really mindful about it.
Yeah, thank you. And luckily for those in the audience, we have three very good people here who are investing in their community and in their staff. So I'm not going to let you guys off the hook on this one if you want to chime in on that too.
Yeah, I just think start with the end in mind is always really important, that if you know that you want to contribute and give back to the community, it doesn't have to be grand at the beginning, but know where you want to end up and make sure you're allocating enough in your budget to be able to do that. And I think it starts with actually employee satisfaction that allows you to be able to do that. So I kind of start with my employees, right? Knowing that they're going to be able to build the business and help, that allows me to be able to contribute back to the community in the future.
Yeah, that's all good information. Ours was totally different. Just because of our business model, right? So our concept was we didn't want to just be any regular brewery that's trying to put beers on the shelves at Safeway or Walmart or whatever. We wanted to be a community center. And to be a community center, we had to come in kind of shooting pretty quickly and investing in our community very quickly. Similar to these guys, though, we did make very, relatively small strategic investments into our community. Just being in the alcohol industry, we've made it a policy that we don't put money into, like kids sports and stuff where like, our banner would be on the, at a softball field somewhere, and under 13s are playing. Like that doesn't really make a lot of sense for our business, right? That said, we are trying to be a family-centric location, so we're trying to put money into where we see families. We heavily go into, boys and girls clubs, so that is going into youth, but it's not, bannered and marketed. Our beer company is not bannered or marketed there. So we've been very strategic about that, and we've been really strategic about making sure. Because these guys will all talk to it. I'm sure most of you guys have seen it in business too. You could give away all your money today if you serviced every single person that walked in the door and handed you a pamphlet and said, please support this gymnastics, this karate, this thing, this whatever. And you want to, right? Like we're all community people. We all want to give like that, but we just can't. So you have to look at the things that coalesce with your business, because the stuff that we support may not be the ones that these two guys support. So somebody will help them, and you have to trust that your community, not just you, will be able to help them.
Thanks. And if I can go just a little bit off script, because I think I'm hearing all three of you get to this. It's fun that employee welfare and community giving are on the same question, because are there opportunities you can accomplish both of those at the same time by engaging your staff and finding out what their values are and what things are important to them as you make those decisions in giving back?
Yeah, I think so. So All Care Health does seminars every once in a while, and so I'll actually try to get my team together to actually go to those events and venues to be able to show our presence, but also be able to benefit the employee from learning and engaging and being able to take care of those things. So I think there can be some symmetry within those two items.
Yeah.
I try to think of it too, if someone on our staff has an idea of like, hey, this is a really cool event or a project or an organization, can we somehow participate? I kind of put it on that person, like, okay, take that idea. What can we do with it? What's realistic? Can you use a little bit of your time? And that's maybe a way that Rentec can participate in this idea to support the employee on doing like a charitable organization. Actually, Brittany, who's right here, she's always been at the forefront of doing our angel tree every year, which is in the Christmas time, of a way to support youth in our community. And I'm always so excited to do it because it's things I really want to do but don't find the bandwidth. So if I can support one of our employees with these ideas, it can feel exciting and feel good. But like Troy was saying, it's hard to say no to things because we want to say yes to everything. It feels so good. So I really want to put it on the employee of like, yeah, you want to do that? Let's figure out what that actually looks like. Is it us just writing a check? Or are you going to be putting in like 100 hours of your time to make a tree for Winterfest? Is there another way that we can support this idea that is a little bit more cost effective, but is still a way to support your idea, your want to give back? And then I love the idea of bringing our employees together to do things as much as possible, whether that's a group event or is there another way that we can all go to something that is sponsored by another business in our community too. So whether that's just supporting something that the chamber does or one of our other businesses does, or also that could be a little bit more charitable. I like to put it on them to come up with the ideas too.
Yeah, and I think this is the perfect room for that because I give a little credit to Troy, and it's the multiplier of a group like YPN, because we talk about community giving and of course we all think about that donation request for a check, but I think what I've got to see after being a business owner, and now in the position of the chamber, the YPN, if it's a street cleanup or it's Raptor Creek and it's engaging their staff and energizing them, I think you're accomplishing both at the same time, and it may not always be breaking out the checkbook, and sometimes the things that don't take the checkbook have a greater impact on the staff well-being and creating the team. So thank you for letting me go off script there just a little bit. Back on, what's the toughest obstacle you've overcome running a business? And I'm sure you can all jump right in on that one.
I'll start. Growth. Especially when we're talking about this, the title of this is cash flow, right? So when we chose to grow during COVID, knowing that on the back end of that, hoping, I would say, on the back end of that we would be coming out and that the world would open back up and things would go back to normal and there'd be a surge of people looking for a place to go and spend time with folks. Those of you guys that don't know our background, we were kind of forced to grow. We didn't really anticipate growing, but we were kind of coming to the end of the term with our previous place, and it didn't make sense for us to stay there. The financial benefit wasn't there. In fact, I ran the cash flow on that, and it was negative because of rent increases and the such. And so having to grow and having to figure out where to find money and how to put something together, and then to make tough personal financial decisions and stuff to delay gratification, to delay income, to stop paying owners for a period of time like we had to. I mean, that's kind of those are the hard things you have to do to be able to grow, right? And there's really only two ways to grow. It's either through debt or equity. It's whatever capital structure you go with, or some variation of the two. And people want to get debt because typically it's lower interest rate, it's a fixed term, it's relatively it's the same as getting a car loan or a mortgage or something like that, or similar, I would say, to that sort of thing. But when you're starting up a business, that isn't always available to you, because they're going to do just like you go in to buy a car, or you go in to buy a house. They're going to look at your your debt to income, and they're going to say, "Boy, these guys are not making enough money," right? And so, in that case, you're going to have to find equity, and sometimes equity is in the sphere of taking a second mortgage on your home, or it's in the sphere of bringing in other potential partners, equity owners to your business. And so that's kind of that hard balance you have to kind of figure out, and especially in the startup world, come to terms with what your risk tolerance will allow.
Challenges, Casey?
So I have two. One has been hiring, which maybe is a result of COVID and the workforce. And that, I feel like, is maybe something a lot of businesses have experienced. Hopefully it's getting a little bit easier for people out there. But another one that really affected Rentec is compliance with changing regulations just for business law and then tax law especially. Law-wise, our clients are all over the country, and each state, each jurisdiction, each county has different laws that pertain to rental management. And so we have to ensure that our software is customizable to help our clients be compliant with those laws. So that is something that we have to be on top of. But more an obstacle is understanding different state-specific tax laws. A couple years ago, a lot of states decided to see software sold online and tax it the same as like a physical product and start implementing sales tax requirements. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of information out there about it, and so we really had to do our due diligence and talk to lots of people to be like, how do we approach this? And to be honest, some professional accounting companies told us, don't worry about it, like catch up later once they figure it out. But in order to reduce our risk, it was more important for us to just figure out what we should do and just start paying those bills. And honestly, if we hadn't had those big reserves and a decade's worth of experience, we wouldn't have been necessarily able to accommodate those unexpected expenses from suddenly now we're getting charged sales tax in tons of states when we didn't have those expenses the year before. So just for us, reducing the risk by really being aware of changing laws and regulations, both for taxes and federally and on the state level, how they pertain to business and our clients, that's just something we have to pay attention to.
As far as an experience for me, it was probably the mortgage meltdown of 2008, 2009, that time frame. And being able to see what's coming at you and being able to navigate appropriately. So in my case, I was in residential lending and mortgages, but unfortunately that was drying up relatively quickly, that I had to pivot and go into private lending and be able to have a private equity firm that would help fund loans when capital was constrained in the marketplace. But looking ahead and looking for those pitfalls and being able to navigate appropriately before they hit you is paramount in being able to survive as a business and not getting stuck in your own rut, but being able to deviate off course for the benefit of the business, not for the benefit of yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Great point. Very, very much livable by me. And a good segue, I'm going to let you keep that one, because not that it would be relevant to any of your businesses, but because you get to work with others, let's talk about somebody else's business. But how would negative cash flow in a situation like that absolutely break a business?
Well, these guys could probably say more to the point of being able to meet payroll than I could, but I think that that's the number one pitfall of being able to maintain and manage payroll. It's a big expense to a company. But from my side of it as a lender, if you don't have cash flow, if you're not bringing in money on debt servicing and things like that, we won't give you a loan. I mean, it's plain and simple. So having that cash flow and being able to show it on paper is really important. A lot of people are wealthy personally, but they don't know how to apply it to their taxes to be able to get ahead and be able to acquire more properties, expand their business, do the things that they need to. That setting up their taxes appropriately and showing it on paper is huge. Because somebody can have personal cash flow, but their businesses look terrible.
And that negative cash flow idea, I think it goes right into lending, getting access to loans so you could potentially grow your business, but also just thinking about that future planning. Just like you might personally have your expenses covered for a month or 3 months, whatever that is in your mind, businesses can really benefit from having that reserve fund. To cover payroll, to keep the lights on, and then also kind of being agile to change and be recognizing the trends. Like, if our signups are going down, or if we're not getting as many people paying for the services this month, and this happens for 3 months, where will we be at that point? So can we make changes now? Can we start adjusting different expenses? Can we get rid of softwares that we're not using, services we're not using now to kind of change that bottom line now so in the future you're not too stressed out a little bit?
And you want to add? Because it is a good segue and fits right into you, because again, back to that first question, you know, the difference between profitability and cash flow. Now we're into a conversation of growth versus cash flow, you know. So from an outsider looking in, this business is profitable, they're growing, but behind the scenes, you're like, okay, we've got some cash flow issues going on and we need to shore some things up. I think you started to talk about some of your personal experiences, but what things have you cut? What sacrifices do you make in those situations to get that cash flow right?
Well, and looking at growth, I think you got to realize too that, I mean, I think everybody knows this, but the more money you make, the more money you're probably going to have to spend, right? To make that money, you're probably going to have to spend money to get there. And you've got to be very flexible in your business and be willing to pivot very quickly, and to his point, to throw something out very quickly if it's not working, if it's not cash flowing, if it's not making the money that you want it to make. For us, I think, I don't know that we've actually had to make a lot of sacrifices, to be honest with you. The main sacrifices we make is probably in owner equity, right? Like, you know, a lot of businesses would probably take more money and push it to their owners, whereas we don't necessarily do that because, and we'll get to another one of your questions here at the same time. We are a relatively seasonal business. You know, we see slower times in the summer when it's really hot. We see slower times in the January, February time because it's wet and people aren't going outside, and you know, they've dry January, damn it, you know, like all those kind of things, right? So, you know, and people want to look good for the beach, and so they don't drink as much in the summer, right? So spring and fall, like we know that's the time that we're probably going to do a little bit better, and so we try to take that and as we cash flow and as I'm watching the money come in, typically I'll take a portion of that and push it into savings, know that it's going into some sort of seasonal savings, and you know, some businesses would want to take that money and invest it. We try to keep it very liquid. Because you know, to Dan's point earlier, you know, you have to be able to make that payment out to your employees, right? The quickest way to lose your employees, the community's viz on your business is to not pay your employees on time, right? So you have to be able to do that. And again, I don't think we've had to make too many. Like probably the biggest choice that we've had to step away from is not doing distribution. Which a lot of people think is crazy, but if you run the numbers, there's zero money in that. And we played the game before COVID for almost a year where we distributed, and I can tell you for a fact we made $0 on it.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Do you think part of the reason that you actually haven't had to sacrifice as much is because of that pre-planning and taking a look and being very orchestrated on your movements prior to where it doesn't disrupt the model as much as it may to another potential person who's not forecasting?
Yeah, absolutely. And even more so to that point, Dan, you know, when we started the business, we said our priority, this business will be more than just a brewery, it'll be a community center. So whatever we do, whatever decisions we make, you know, the Gladiator, this, right? It all comes to, does it improve the community? We do that. Does it not improve the community? In distribution, in some cases, doesn't. So we've had to do that, and that's a sacrifice that we've had to make, and probably a very smart one from a cash flow perspective, but it's allowed us to focus on the community, to give back to the community, and to create the community center and the family kind of venue that we wanted to create from the beginning.
Thank you.
I want to share kind of on what Troy was saying. You're saying like the Gladiator method, the community sounds like one of your core values as a company. And I've always thought of core values being really great guiding principles for those decision making. So when I first started at Rentec, I'm fresh out of school, like ready to do it the right way. And I'm like, Nathan, what's your business plan? What's your mission statement? And he was like, oh, I don't have that. I'm like, well, let me create it. He's like, I wasted time. But over time, just
agree.
But seeing and understanding how, and getting kind of mentored through how Nathan was running the business in those first 5 years. Okay, there are core values that are emerging just by how one person was running a business and making decisions. And so if we can hone in on those, that can really help us make decisions in the future to decide, okay, are we going to develop a product? Is it actually going to help our clients, our customers? Because customer service and client experience is that core value. And that has helped not only decide how our company can grow, but also comes back to who we serve, and now we can actually attract more clients because we're making decisions that uphold that core value.
You want to jump in on that one? I'm gonna add, because you nailed it, and I appreciate you staying on topic. But from knowing you guys just a little bit and being a community member, you stayed on track with the fact that we're talking about cash flow and finances. But thank you for your humility, because you didn't bring up your sacrifice of time and family and all the things that you've done to bring these businesses to our communities, to be on panels like this and sharing your education and knowledge. So thank you for the sacrifices you made in your personal lives to not just cash flow, but keep your businesses here in our community. Thank you.
Actually, Terry, I will add one more thing. I keep getting all these great ideas. I keep thinking of other things. One of the things that we use pretty strategically in RenTech is the adoption of different softwares to automate our tasks. But we really, really have to be mindful and thoughtful of how much those cost. I was looking at one today and I'm like, oh my gosh, can we utilize the free version before we have to jump into paying for it? Like, will we actually be using the software as much? When I first started, I wanted to make an ebook, and I went through are any of you familiar with HubSpot? It's a CRM system. I went through the sales process with them, and I'm like, I need this. We're gonna use this so much. Because I was totally sold on the experience from the sales team. And then I'm like, it only costs this much, and it's way too much for making an ebook. And I was told no, and I was pretty crushed. But at the same time, looking back on it, that was a strategic decision. It was a sacrifice, and that I had to make and understand, but it has kind of guided me too. Now I'm using those same practices when someone on our team comes and I found a software for this. And I even tell them, go do research. How can we use the software to make this easier for us? But also okay, what does it cost? Let's use the trial. Are you actually using it now that we have a trial or we have a lower cost subscription or level of it? So it's kind of those strategic decisions still, even though there might be the one thing that could save everything, but really how much are we going to use it, and will it prove the value of generating us more revenue over time?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go back to Dan. You talk about having the ability to have the foresight of seeing what's coming, or some risks or red flags. If I can ask this as a two-part question, and maybe have the others follow up as well, but how do you, inside your own business, and then you coaching and working with other business, really assess that risk tolerance so that when you do see something on the horizon, whether it's for the better or for the worse, you can react accordingly?
Well, it's twofold. So we've talked a lot about reserves, and hopefully we'll get into that as we go through. Reserves allow you the freedom to be able to see from a 30,000-foot level and not be in the trenches, right? So a majority of business owners are in the trenches day in and day out, and they don't come up for air. And that's really what is defeating or impacting their business in a negative way. If you come up and you actually take a look from a higher perspective and see what's on the horizon, you can make very calculated and good decisions, but when you're on ground level, you can't see anything.
Yeah, we always, in my own business, talked about, we would do this at our meetings. How much time are you spend working in the business versus on the business? So, yeah, that.
And I would say, if I had to venture a guess, all three of us probably spend a lot of time on the business, not in the business, and that's the direct reflection of our successful businesses because of that.
Yeah, it's a hard place to get to, though. Yeah. Casey, you want to talk about risk assessment?
So I think it just kind of what Dan was saying. It is that top level view, and what we have found successful is looking at all of the expenses every single month. Since we are cash basis, that works for us because we can see income coming in and income coming out. And then at that same time, looking at the whole year and what we're expecting to spend, the quarterly taxes that get paid, the subscription that we choose to pay annually instead of monthly, just to get a little bit of those savings. So we can see where those fluctuations come. And that kind of helps us with that pre-planning. And then also, when I always think about risk, I think about what else can we do to protect ourselves, to prevent really big expenses in the form of lawsuits that might come. In software, we always have to think about the digital risks that happen for our clients, for our own information, and so paying for the right insurance, really understanding what our risks are for us and for our clients, and protecting that data. And then also utilizing a legal team when we need to. Maybe there's something that we don't quite understand, but we really need that advice to prevent that big fee that could happen just because we've been in business for decades at this point.
I mean, I think most people that are in the food and beverage industry would say that they're high risk. That's not my perspective. I don't believe that I'm high risk or that our business is high risk. I think that we try to, kind of like Dan was saying, we try to look from a 30,000 view and try to anticipate where the market's going, how we can better service our customers and the people that are coming to our location, because obviously we get a lot of people off of the 5 as well. But as far as like risk tolerance, I think it comes down to you can take calculated risk and you can trial things if you have that cash reserve. So you can feel confident that you can grow and you can make minor steps if you have that cash reserve. And I forget what this was like a Bezos quote, but effectively it's you make small adjustments that you can come back from rather than making large adjustments that you can't come back from. And that's a way to like manage your risks. And when I look at weekends, I try to apply that as well. So we might make, a small adjustment, bring in, different types of other beverages and the such, because, obviously we don't just have beer there. And we might test and trial out a few different ones to see where that lands. It's a very small risk, right? If it's a very, very small amount of money put into that, we'll see how it works. We have the data, we can pull the data. But then, you got to be careful on taking risks of like jumping to something that you can't come back from. And sometimes that thing is building a building or growing beyond what you can do. It's trying to service the second community when you really need to focus on the first community, right? Because we've got people that are asking us to open a location in Medford or whatever. Well, if we did that, we would have to have a slightly different structure for the business to be able to do that. And we'd have to make sure that we don't stop servicing our customers here and make sure that they see that they're the priority, right? So you have to, I think you kind of have to pull your risk kind of like that. If it's a small one, jump at it, see what happens. Easy to back out of if it doesn't work out. If it's a large one, I think you got to be very careful on jumping into it.
Thanks. And I really enjoy that, throughout the diversity of panelists, whether it's hospitality, tech, and lending, you're all coming back to the core fundamentals of just running a business. It's not, oh, this is my world because it's hospitality, this is my world because it's tech. I'm hearing a pretty common thread of this is business management. And so if I can, just go off script just a little bit with the diversity in panelists here, whether it's your own industry, and this is where we may vary just a little bit, or economics as a whole, any red flags that you're seeing on the horizon right now that you're watching out for as risks? And Dan, lending is maybe maybe the one to start with. I mean, I would imagine there's so much out of your control.
So this is going to be, I'll try to break it down. Hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yeah.
That really is probably the summation of that. Is there are many different things that can impact the economics and the forecasting and what's happening. I always plan for the worst outcome that's possible. That way, if the market comes in before that, I'm already prepared, ready to go, and I can actually launch in, but I'm prepared for the worst that happens.
Yeah. Casey, ever-moving tech world, competitive as can be.
Yeah, so things that we get really scared about is data breaches. I mean, we have so many systems in place to protect our clients' data, protect our own data, but you hear it all the time of big companies, financial institutions, credit bureaus getting hacked. So what is happening where people are finding smarter and smarter ways to get through the cracks and get access to that data? So we spend extra time thinking about how we can protect our clients' data, but it's also that like looming, this could happen anytime. And so the best thing we can do is educate our clients on how they can also protect their data, why it's important to set up 2FA, why it's important to protect all of your passwords, because if something were to happen and they still need to access their accounts, they still need to access their finances, they should already know what they need to do in order to be able to get their information not as risky if someone were to get access to it. And then also, we're always thinking about what's going to happen in housing, because our clients are landlords, our clients are property managers. So if any fluctuations and changing in the housing market can affect our clients. So we don't always know what that's going to be. Last time, actually, in the mortgage crash, landlords went up because there was a lot of foreclosures. There was a lot of purchases that had our clients build inventory. But with the mortgage rates rising, that affects people purchasing. So there's lots of little ups and downs, and we just always try to continue with education to our clients, because that's what we found is the biggest value we can add, so they know what to do if things change and how they can pivot their businesses as well.
Right. And so in our industry, you guys may know, there's 7,000 breweries in the country, right? So every one of them is different. And so you really have to, we personally have to figure out what makes us special, and how we've decided we're focused on families and communities, right? So that's different. There's, I think, 6 breweries in Grants Pass at this point. And so with that, we have to continue to be new and interesting and develop new products and provide new services to our community. But that said, when you look at, or at least when I look at the market, I look at it and is it something I can affect, or is it something I can't affect, right? And so if it's something I can't affect, I don't worry too much about it, right? If it's something I can't affect, I go ahead and I make an adjustment to the business model or to the business in general. During COVID, we couldn't affect what was going on. We didn't know if we were going to be open next week. We didn't know if we were going to be closed. We didn't know if 50 people were allowed inside or outside or what. We had no idea, right? And it changed, OSHA came and let us know all the time when it would change. So anyways, with that, you can only do the best you can, right? And so look at the things that you can affect. You can't affect what the mortgage rates are going to be next month or the lending rates are going to be. Just look for the opportunities out there, and if you can, get off your hands and go do it, right? And that's kind of what it comes down to, is take advantage of the opportunities when they approach.
I will say that when you see what's on the horizon and coming at you, fight the natural reaction to react to what is coming, and calculate it in your decision on execution. A lot of people just react to the situations at hand when it does come on them, or they do see something on the horizon. Take a step back, which is very counterintuitive for us as humans, but then recalibrate and then attack it from the front side, as opposed to reactionary decisions will bury your business.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of it's happened in this room. So just an expansion on that, you've got business partners, you've got, spouses who are involved in your business. But when you're really just going out there and brainstorming, keeping your head above, that 30,000-foot level, working on your business, what opportunities do you take to network and bounce those ideas with other people? And, what circles can people find to do that in? Obviously, we're sitting in one of them right here. But.
Yeah, I mean, so, obviously, Kelsey's here, Ashley's here. Both of them are very involved in the local community. I've got a lot of ties outside of the community back on the East Coast, so I use those to kind of reach out to people that may have a different perspective, that can see from a different sort of sphere what might be going on. So we just try to use our network, use the people that we know, and it's fun to do, right? It's fun to talk about business. It's fun to talk to people and get their perspective, and to hear something new and interesting and different. And so I think that's kind of what we've just chosen to do in our own spheres, and it seems to work out very well.
Yeah, I think we can take advantage of in-person gatherings, and kind of going back to what's important to you is joining a business organization, going to build your network for you to learn about business things, but also, are there other activities that you could get at? Because you don't know what else you can learn if you're in a pickleball league, or take a fitness class, or have another artistic hobby. So as much as you can, put yourself out there, but it also doesn't need to be in person. We're so lucky, I feel like, double-edged sword, right? Lucky to be involved or coming up right now in this digital world, where there are so many online platforms, online forums, where you can just read and get what different communities are talking about, or you can participate in a way that is really low barrier to ask questions, get answers, provide feedback, and engage with the community that can be as small or as big as you want. And so we've really found, like, we love business, we love talking about it, and so being involved in the chamber, being involved in So Ready, going to those different events and meeting the different people at them has been so helpful because it's interesting to talk about it. But then personally, we're also involved in our own thing through social groups or through those online outlets.
To kind of springboard off of that and get more to the question that you had, I would say as you have counsel that's impacting your business, be very careful who you bring into the inner circle, right? Everybody will have opinions on lots of different things. That my mentors are in my line of work on purpose. They're not competing, they're not, going after my business, but they are related to my business. And then for the more ancillary things, of course, I have a bigger sphere that I can ask questions and get feedback and beta test things. But that core network, that core group of people are people that I would trust with my life, that I know that they have my best interest in mind when I do bounce an opportunity or something against them.
Yeah, thank you. And with that in mind, for the folks that took the time to engage with our panelists, I'd love to just open it up. I had the opportunity to come up with some of these questions today. Hopefully it was helpful to you. I've got a couple more before we wrap it up, but I'd really love the opportunity to let you ask questions if anybody's got any in your world that we haven't addressed yet. You can be loud? All right.
I want to touch base on taxes a bit, because obviously business entities have different structures than your typical W-2 employee. So at what point did you start looking into your different tax structures as your business grew to know that you needed to make a change in your structure? And who did you kind of rely on? Because obviously a lot of accountants have a lot of different opinions. So how did you find your person?
Everybody in the back hear that? Okay.
So we recently made a change from being a regular old LLC to what is it called? S corp. Yeah. And so yeah, that's my accountant right there. So actually, I should hand her this mic, but I'll speak off the cuff anyway. Anyways, it really comes down to like how much revenue are you bringing in is really especially when you go from LLC to S corp. How much revenue are you bringing in, and does it make sense? Like, can you as an owner draw like legally within the IRS draw like a low income and then service the rest of your income needs based on owner distributions, right? So I think it kind of comes to that, so you want to be really careful not to, obviously you don't want to do anything that's illegal or anything. You need to go talk to your accountant, but you better have an accountant that you really trust and who knows what your business is and what you're trying to achieve and what your growth strategy is. Recently we even made an adjustment with the accountant from, a very good accountant to an even better accountant, because we kind of needed that person who really understood and could spend the time with us and understand our business well enough. So I think that's just a really important thing. But it really came down to a revenue number, and we made the decision actually a little bit late. But we had a good accountant who could go back in time. Somehow she, or he, went back in time and was able to, retroactively make it an S corp at the beginning of the year. So that's one of those things where I wish we would have looked a little bit further out in advance. We were looking at it in December. Wasn't enough time to be able to make the adjustment. We weren't able to make it until like into Q1, but we were able to retroactively make the adjustment as well, which worked out really great because we had a great accountant.
Coming from a realtor, you want to jump in?
Yeah. $158,000 in gross revenue is the cutoff point to be able to go from LLC to S corporation. Therefore, you omit your Social Security liability taxes.
Not having that perspective, but having it also. Thank you, cut and dry.
Was that profitability or cash flow?
This is recorded, so you can write that down. But I thought and a great question, because I struggled with this myself, is because again, we're in a cash flow and accounting meeting, but oftentimes, I would speak to my lawyer who would have a different perspective on that because there's different levels of protections. It's not always just the taxes and the structure there, but, the protections you're offering yourselves as an individual when you change those filings can change too. But I don't know the answers. I go ask professionals. So, other questions from audience? Nope, no. Yeah.
About a year ago, I went to a cybersecurity seminar in Medford, and it didn't dawn on me at the time that most businesses put together an IT budget, but not a cybersecurity budget when it comes to security preparedness. So I was just curious how you guys look at that and how you prepare for that.
Well, I would definitely say for Rentec as a tech company and just the passion of our founder, Nathan, is that cybersecurity is one of those core values. So, when I think of IT versus cybersecurity, I think they would be separated out because there's more time and effort that goes into that cybersecurity protection specifically versus IT can kind of encompass a lot of things. And so I think it's the time and energy that goes into it and really understanding the risk that can come with it. And then also that education piece of, for us, we're educating our clients, we're educating all of our staff about the value and the importance of cybersecurity and protecting data. I mean, we even, just the other day, I told someone, I need to go over a protocol of what it means when you get access to that list and what they do for it. So it's still always constantly in our mind. But in terms of budgeting, I would personally think that they would fall in two different categories.
Anybody in here, I didn't catch it in the beginning, but anybody in insurance in the room? Oh, there you go. See, I mean, I was terrible. My agent was like, "You have no insurance on this?" I'm like, I sell food and beverage. Yeah, I don't think it's recommended to go without cyber insurance these days.
We have it.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we have a POS system, which, obviously we have somebody who services that provides the cybersecurity. We have, a website that's got cybersecurity attached to it. It's all kind of built into each of our services, but on top of that, we still have insurance for cybersecurity, right? Just like you hold maybe additional umbrella insurance on something, your cybersecurity insurance, or if it's built into your package, which it is in our case, it kind of acts as that umbrella, and it's worth having.
And Troy was mentioning POS systems. We have a digital solution, but also think about your own personal Facebook accounts and all of your social networks that maybe represent you or your business. What would happen if that account got attacked, and how would you respond to that? And so whether there's different cybersecurity insurances that can help with it, but also just best practices and what you can do to maintain the integrity of those different accounts that you have out there.
Any other questions? Move on. Yeah, go ahead.
In personal finance, you're generally recommended to have 3 to 6 months of expenses, more or less, depending on who you ask, saved up, and then any money after that, generally you should invest. Is there a similar rule of thumb for business?
Great question.
Yes, but it's up to you to determine the risk. And so most businesses would suggest you hold the cash that you need for, to service your operation, and maybe a couple months beyond, just like that. However, we don't follow that rule, right? Because if all of our money is sitting into an account, we don't know what the liquidity is of that. Even if it's in a high interest account or something like that, something that's supposed to be highly liquid. Yeah, who is it that just went out of business because they had all their money tied into a CD? Oh, that was the bank, Silicon Valley Bank, right? So all their money was tied into CDs, right? It wasn't liquid, couldn't get it because they invested beyond what the risk level would allow for. So I think it just determines your business, the level of risk you're willing to take, which I would suggest keeping it very low. And then holding cash available to make sure you're meeting payroll. Because again, I mentioned this earlier, but if you don't meet payroll, it's not just your employees that are upset. Everybody in town now thinks that you're personally screwing your employees and buying, outlandish vehicles and everything. Their mind automatically goes to, that you are the bad person here. So you want to mitigate that perception and hold cash in the most liquid potential location.
I would also say that based on your comfort level to execute the next plan in your business, right? So each of us have a varying degree of how much cash we need to be able to take that next step. For some of us, it's higher, some of us, it's lower. But whatever you feel comfortable enough to be able to know that your needs are met and then execute on the next plan of action or action plan for your business, that truly is the number. Wherever you feel comfortable saying, okay, I can now proceed on this venture, that's the amount of cash that you needed. I don't think that there's a generic answer for that.
And with the world being so kind of unstable right now, you actually see businesses doing kind of the opposite of that. What they're doing is instead of investing their cash, they're actually going out because they are so cash heavy, and they're taking loans, right? So that those loans allow you to then increase your what is that called? Your return on equity, right? So your business return on equity. So if you can have a higher return on equity by having these loans, by having cash available, right? And then they don't have to be loans. You can have any method that allows you to have cash available at any point will help you grow or increase your valuation. And so what that allows is, one, for you to maintain the lifestyle as a business owner that you're accustomed to. It doesn't have to just come out of your bottom line, because if it does, if you run out of money, it's coming out of you. It's coming out of you. You're the owner, right? But if you have those loans there, you can tap into them if need be. To make sure that you're in a good spot.
And if I can follow up with a question on that, because I do think it goes back to Dan's point of having your head above water to see the horizon, to be able to make those decisions. If I can ask you within your own business, when you're doing your strategic planning, how far are you going out? 1 year, 3 year, 5 year? Because I think that really helps you begin to answer those questions.
For me personally, I would say it's probably the max horizon is probably 10 years, because we don't know what the world looks like.
Yeah.
Really start getting in granular at about 5 years, 3 years, and then 6 months, right? Because I think that 6 months projection is going to help out with the 3 year.
Yep. That
helps out with the 5 year. Those are kind of my time categories on that event horizon. Where do I want to be? What kind of flow do I want through the business? What is it going to look like for employee count? Things like that. Because those little steps that you make in 6 months are actually going to bring the 5 year plan to fruition.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, me too, because, again, if you've got that cash to invest, I think it depends where you're at in that plan, and did you look far enough out to have in 3 years, this is something that we're going to need, or are we doing something that provides a little bit more liquidity to offer the safety net? So, Robin, if get on to final question, or okay, it's going to make it pretty easy, but let you be as broad as you want on this. But, if you were starting all over again today, or talking to yourself at 16, 18-year-old self back then, what do you wish you knew about cash flow prior to starting and running a business? Big question.
So I think it's just really understanding that idea of a reserve fund and looking way out in the future. Maybe it's not 5 years, 10 years at that point, but as much as you can, save money. Don't be spending more than you have in those early startup days, I think can be really, really, really valuable. So you can make those strategic choices. I mean, thinking about, my first business when I was 21, and I was just like, oh, this money comes in. I didn't have any inventory. It was just my services. So I wasn't thinking about it. It was so easy to spend and take that as income, when really you want to be thinking about those reserves, those future expenses. Like, when will I need to get another kit to hire my next employee? So I just wasn't thinking that much far ahead. And I think that would have been really valuable.
I'd say, while we made the joke earlier that like a business plan isn't really not necessary sometimes, it is if you're trying to get a loan. But I think a lot of it comes down to, if you don't, is projecting where, right? Like creating a forecast of where you think this business is going to go, and understand, get out an Excel document and create a balance sheet for yourself based on forecast. And look in the left and the right columns, look at your assets, look at your liabilities, and understand, is my income going to be able to pay for all these liabilities that, whether it's debt service, whether it's rents, whether it's employees. If I add another employee at $60,000 a year, it's going to cost me this much, $5,000 a month plus pennies. Like, what does that actually look like? How does that affect my business? So I think it's important to actually spend the time, clear your desk, get an Excel document out, and actually run the numbers and understanding, what is, where your downfall could be, and plan for that.
One of the things that I wish I could rewind the hands of time and utilize better in my earlier years would definitely be banks want to give you money when you don't need it. They don't want to give you money when you need it. Fair enough, right? And that's the reality, that if you get an opportunity to be able to capitalize yourself early on without taking on a lot of debt and without burying yourself, take advantage of those opportunities, because at some point you're going to need the liquidity, right? But when you're buried, you can't get it. The other thing is, a relationship with a personal banker will change your life. So I wish somebody, my mentor, somebody would have told me that a personal banker will literally change your life, opening doors, allowing you to be able to get a loan, saying, hey, your DTI, your debt to income ratio looks a little bit wonky, but we know you're solid. We're taking a bet on you. Having that personal relationship has changed my entire business model.
Thank you all.
And one other thing I wanted to add is I don't think it's ever too early to start thinking about your exit plan. I'm dealing with this with my dad right now. He's had a professional engineering company for so long, but he's never tracked his finances enough to be able to have a product to sell or a company to sell, even though the potential is there. So if, even 5 years ago, he was thinking about that and he had that P&L statement, he had finances to share, what a better position he'd be in right now than trying to think back. Or he's also saying, do I have to work another 5 years to make this something of value to sell? So if you can think about it now and think about, not only can tracking all your finances, tracking your cash flow help you with future projecting, but what other opportunities can it give you? Can it give you access to loans when you don't necessarily need them? Can it give you access to selling a part of your business or bringing on another partner? So there's more value than just having that top view of your cash flow.
Thank you. And really, to wrap it up, I'm just a really sincere thank you to all of you, your different personalities, the different businesses that you bring to the table. Being up here and being able to share those experiences with me and with the audience, it means a lot. Grateful. Thank you. Also, as I pass it back to Robin, some of these questions about building that network and where can we go. I know a lot of you are already involved in participating, but YPN, who's putting this on, whether it's the opportunities to learn or engage with others in your community or just give back and do the right thing, Robin and all those serving in YPN, thank you. And I'll hand it back to you. Maybe we can give away a gift card.
First, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate it so much more than you even know.